Sometimes we have people on that have, well, first of all, we can't believe they're on with me, but they have so many titles. I guess we just call her by all of them. Yes. Former Secretary of Health and Human Services and Representative, Congresswoman from the great state of Florida, Representative Secretary. I don't even know what else. Donna Shalala. Good morning, Secretary.
Good morning, Stephanie. Just skip just call me Donna.
Oh, no, I can't do that. I can't. But I went to Catholic school. So, Representative, I hate to do this to you right off the top, but I know you probably don't speak gibberish, but I know you're fighting very hard to keep health care for everybody in the middle of a pandemic. This part of the Chris Wallace interview, just take a listen for a minute. Here we go.
Excuse me. You heard me yesterday. We're signing a health care plan within 2 weeks. A full and complete health care plan that the Supreme Court decision on DACA gave me the right to do. So we're going to sign an immigration plan, a health care plan, and various other plans. And nobody will have done what I'm doing in the next 4 weeks. The Supreme Court gave the President of the United States powers that nobody thought the President had by doing what they did, their decision on DACA.
Okay, Secretary, first of all, didn't the Supreme Court rule the opposite, that no one is above the law, that the president does not? And what does the DACA decision have to do? And he doesn't have a health care plan ready to go in 2 weeks, does he? Do you have any idea what he's talking about?
I have no idea what he's talking about. He's mixing up the Supreme Court decision on DACA, which overruled his decision to end DACA, with health care, I guess. This is the repeal and replace. He's never had a replace, and he doesn't have the votes to repeal.
Right.
So
I think he confused DACA with ACA, didn't he? And he doesn't have a health care plan in 2 weeks. Okay. It seems like everything that he's just making up, he says it's coming in 2 weeks, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I thought maybe I missed something. I was
makes no sense, but he's dangerous.
Right. You said, you tweeted, make no mistake, health care is on the ballot in November, and the only candidate with a plan to expand access to quality health care is Joe Biden. I mean, the fact that he is literally, as we speak, trying to take health care away from millions of people in the middle of a pandemic is truly terrifying, isn't it?
And yes, and he has junk plans out there that are confusing people about whether they have coverage. But the people that are affected the most are low-income workers who don't have health care, minorities who don't have health care, because some of the states have not extended Medicaid, and because he has refused to allow us to extend health care to everyone in this country during this tremendous, terrible coronavirus.
Yeah. Secretary, so you tweeted the truth about school reopening. Schools are struggling to bring students back into the classroom because the Trump administration failed in its response to this pandemic. The GOP Senate must pass the HEROES Act to help schools reopen safely. Just listen to Speaker Pelosi for a minute on schools.
Think of me as sort of a lioness. I'm okay. You come near my cubs, you're dead. I mean, just don't mess with the children. And I consider all of America's children our children. So don't be cavalier about our children. To be in a classroom, these decisions may have to be made locally because of the rate of infection in certain areas, but they have to be made scientifically. And it's just something the president resists, science and governance.
Secretary, it seems to me, whether it's this camp that just had 86 kids get infected, the counselors brought it home to their families. I mean, we've already had test cases, right? That I feel like it is insane to talk about reopening schools, isn't it? And isn't I was just going to say, Chris Wallace did bring up positivity rate, because obviously the president lies about everything. We have nowhere near the lowest mortality rate. We're doing nowhere near the most testing. So everything he says is a lie. But he did say the positivity rate, when Europe reopened their schools, as you know, Secretary, they were at a 1.5% positivity rate. I'm just checking my statistics now. In Florida, it's 19% where you are. In Miami, it's 33% positivity rate.
No way we could reopen the schools. You know, my great friend Marion Edelman of the Children's Defense Fund once said, if we don't stand up for children, then we don't stand for much.
Right.
And the speaker is absolutely right. we just have to fight for the kids. It's not safe. It's not safe for the children. It's not safe for the teachers. A quarter of the teachers in this country are in the high-risk category. It's not safe for anyone that works in school in states where we have these tremendous spikes that are spreading, by the way, all over the country again, because we didn't hit it with a hammer, which is what we needed to do. We didn't have presidential leadership.
Yeah. I mean, what did Paul Krugman say? We drank our children's future away because it was so important for people to go to bars, and we had no, and parties on the beach, and we had no leadership. Now those are the same people saying, why can't I send my kids to school? And Secretary, the other thing is, we have Dr. Redlener on quite frequently, and the part about this, as you know, as former secretary, it's novel. It's called novel because we don't know a lot about this coronavirus yet, and it has killed newborns and 5-year-olds. And I understand statistically they're not as, but as you just said, they absolutely can also spread. Not only are you taking a risk with your child, they can spread it to their teachers, to their own families. It's to the other people that work at the school. That's what a super spreader event is, isn't it?
That's exactly what it is. And, in my district, we have numerous multi-generational living situations, and so whole families are at risk. But our superintendent in Miami-Dade County is being very disciplined, and he's standing up to the governor, and he has no intention of opening the schools if the public health people say it's not safe.
Well, except, we're out here, and I'm out here in Los Angeles, Secretary, talking to you, and it's so frustrating for us out here. I mean, we're at 7% positivity rate, which is not good. We're nowhere near, Arizona and Texas and Florida yet, but we have such a patchwork where LA County's saying, no, only virtual learning. And Orange County, right next to us, is saying, no social distancing, no masks, full in-person school in the fall. I mean, that's part of the problem. This is just insanity to any scientist, isn't it? This patchwork quilt.
Because what happens in LA doesn't stay in LA.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Oh, don't I know it, Secretary?
This is an infection. This is an infection. This spreads across borders. They don't know whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or whether you're a kid or whether you're an adult. This is an infectious disease that also is airborne.
Yeah.
And so we can't stop it in one county. We have to stop it across the country, and that's the tragedy. The tragedy is that this president is dangerous to our health, that people are dying because he's president and he fails to lead. And it's very difficult for any community to be able to go out on their own. We need presidential leadership, and we need leadership from governors. My governor won't even mandate masks.
I know. Well, you said this morning I led my congressional colleagues in sending a letter to Ron DeSantis urging him to, issue stay-at-home orders and a statewide mask mandate until we get this virus under control. But here we go. He's just a Trump sycophant, and we're going to start this dog and pony show today again, right, with press conferences. And because he's him, the president's going to say some dangerous, irresponsible things, right, that go directly out to the American people.
He is. And people are going to die because of this president, unnecessarily. People that are older, people that are younger, and low-income minorities, African Americans, Hispanics, people that were forced to go to work. It's an American tragedy.
It is. It is. You also talk, by the way, you said Florida is the epicenter of this pandemic, and hospitals are running low on important drugs like remdesivir. This is what happens that we now have a zillion hydroxychloroquine because the president, for whatever reason, he and his buddies profiting off it, right? We are overrun with hydroxychloroquine. It not only does not work, but is dangerous. And we don't have the drugs we do need that are like remdesivir, right?
And we don't have testing supplies.
Exactly.
We run out of testing supplies every place. Every company has their own kind of swabs and reagents, and we could have made that uniform if the president had used the Defense Production Act. After all, VCRs are uniform. If we can make VCRs uniform in the United States, we can make testing machines uniform.
Should I get rid of my 8-track? Is that what you're saying? It really is amazing that we are still we have not fixed testing, we have not fixed tracing, and in many cases, the testing results are taking so long, it's useless.
There's
right?
no lab space.
Yeah.
And there's no strategy.
Yeah.
No strategy. And everybody's talking about contact tracing. You can't do contact tracing when you have community spread because you don't know how it's being spread.
Right. I mean, and I'm looking at specific, this story, COVID-19 outbreaks are exploding as churches reopen. I mean, unfortunately, Secretary, I obviously grew up Catholic. But they're saying it's the offering plates that endanger those in the pews, along with Christian practices like shaking hands, hugging, singing, praising, holding hands, taking communion, dipping the host in the chalice with the wine. It's a breeding ground for illness. And so Trump has declared churches essential, correct, mandating they be open for all services. So, right. For example, Kansas, there were 3 COVID clusters that came from church-related activities causing outbreaks in that state. Almost 40 places of worship and religious events have been linked to more than 650 U.S. cases of coronavirus since the pandemic began. I mean, it just seems like all of our priorities are wrong, right? I mean, it seems like a lot of this can be traced to, as you say, just a total lack of national leadership. And that people just thought that's why, unfortunately, no matter who's in it, the bully pulpit matters, doesn't it? Because they thought this is no big deal. It's Memorial Day, and he says this is all going to disappear, and it's summer now, right?
Your vote matters.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. What's sad to me is how many people are going to die before we hopefully can have real leadership at the national level, right? I mean, what is your advice, what we can do other than vote right now? What do parents do that are in this existential crisis over sending their children to school in a pandemic?
Parents ought to do what parents do, and that is protect their children. Mm-hmm. Even though, and I know the economy is linked to going back to school, but going back to school is not more important than the life or death of our children and our teachers. If we have to make a choice, we choose to protect those we love.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm a Catholic, too, and our Archbishop has not opened up the churches. He's been extremely good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's hope there's more like that and more like you. Let's get 100 Donna Shalalas in Congress,
please,
in November. And Representative,
a bunch of them from California.
Yes. Let's get a bunch of them. We Secretary Congresspeople. Secretary, thanks so much for your time as always. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Stay safe.
All right, you too. Thank you. There she goes, Secretary Congresswoman.
Yeah.